So the nukes are coming from Wootton's, and the packages are coming from Cone. Conan Brothers. Okay, and one is Carniolan and one is Italian. The Italian bees are the Ferrari. They're very productive, incredible queens. And Carniolans are a great bee genetic, so you just kind of have to, again, if you can do 2 colonies, it's a great way to compare. Have a colony of Carniolans and a colony of Italians. It's kind of fun. Order your bees now. I know it's getting close in Salt Lake, and so if you want to have bees for this season, then now's a good time. And like he said, up until March 15th, they'll be taking orders. And our the nukes are inspected in California, so they're inspected and disease free.
So, on a nuke, when it comes in, take your clean frame ball, your box, set them in it, and they come in that box instead of in the same way.
Yes. Yes, you keep the organization, and you put them in the center, and you want to do that later in the day. It's best to hive packages and to hive nukes later in the day at about 3, if it's, you know, if the weather is cooperative. Yes. Now, a package of bees, you don't need to smoke when you're doing the installation because they're like a swarm. They're docile, they're vulnerable, they don't have anything to protect. But a nuke, you'll want to give them just a little bit of smoke. It won't take very much time to get your frames into your box. And then you'll want to feed them the same. Yes?
Is it hard to move a colony from buildings?
Where they've colonized inside the building, that's something for an experienced beekeeper to do. And I would look for an association person to do that. In Salt Lake, a lot of people try to do it themselves, but it's great if someone has a contractor's license and they know how to do that, so that they can put back together what they've taken apart.
Going back to the nukes, did you say they were mini?
No. They're full-size frames, so you'll just exchange. It's just a more narrow box, so the same size frame. Yes?
Are any of these bees resistant to the problem that seems to be around the nation, around the world? What with bees?
Well, CCD is a really complex, is that what you're referring to, is colony collapse disorder? That's a really complicated situation that is it's not just because of one thing. So they're experts, entomologists and bee experts are looking for reasons, but they think it's a collective, they're a collective, more than one reason for that in a hive, and they're still, right now it's still a guess.
So they don't have a solution?
They don't have a solution. Hobbyists are a really good solution. So we can keep bees on a smaller scale, and we're not asking them for as much as a commercial beekeeper or a migratory beekeeper. The demand is smaller, so maybe there's not as much pressure, you know, with industrial farming or industrial animal production. There's just a lot of pressure, and so the hobbyists maybe will give some relief there, hopefully.
But right now, there's not much hive collapse with the hobbyists?
Yeah, there's usually a reason. If your bees die suddenly for some reason, oftentimes when the bees are dead, there's a way that they look, so you know if there's pesticide poisoning, or you know if they've been in something, then there's evidence of that. So you would call your apiary, your state apiary inspector, and help you determine what that is. So this is a nuke. This is what the nukes look like. The box is actually redesigned a little bit, but that's basically what it looks like. So you'll either get a package here, a nuke, and then both of them come with a fertile laying queen, and the queen will be released inside the nuke. The package bees will have the queen inside the little box I showed you.
I'm assuming the nuke's more expensive.
The nuke is more expensive. Yeah.
The nuke is $139.99. Again, it comes with the 3 frames and the feeder. Your bee package is $109.99.
So in reality, they're a wash because you're going to end up spending that money on a frame and the feeders. It's $1 difference when you look at the price.
So that's good.
So
That's great.
Getting the nuke is your best bet by getting ready-made hive.
Yeah, and when you go with the nuke, it assures you a little bit of a little larger of a honey harvest guarantee because you're ahead. You're already ahead. So if you have lots of flowers and forage for the bees, and this is the first major nectar bloom in Utah. This is in my bee yard. It's a dandelion, which is kind of funny. You'll look at dandelions differently. You'll look at all flowers differently when you have bees. They're not selective. They're not really blooms. So they have flowers that they like and they don't like, but they'll go to a weed with a flower as sure as they'll go to the salvia or the bee balm that you planted for them. So it really changes the way that you live in your environment because now your bees that are your beloved bees are going to the weed that you've been killing with Roundup for the last 10 years, and now you don't want Roundup on your bees. So it's kind of this interesting thing that happens. So here's the nuke, the open nuke. And here are bee packages in transit. This is how they transport them. They're all kind of stapled to furring strips to give some stability in transport. And this, what do you see right here with this nuke? What do you think about this nuke when you look at it? It's nice and healthy and ready to go in a bigger box, right? Because that's a lot of bees in that little nuke.
Do you get about the same amount of bees in a nuke as you do in a package?
It doesn't look the same because all you can see in your package are bees, and so it looks like you're getting a higher volume of bees. But in reality, once the little brood cycle occurs in your nuke, which could be any time, then you're going to see exponential expansion. So really pretty fast. It fills up very quickly. Much more quickly than with a package, there's going to be a slight decline in adult bee population because their first brood cycle is now going to be in at least 21 days. They have to build the comb, lay the eggs, produce worker bees in those 21 days. So these are the feeders. You saw the in-hive feeder. And these are the ones that are here. There are top feeders. There are pros and cons to every feeder. There are issues with every single one of them. We prefer these. It stays closer to the bees and to the cluster. The top is on top, and they have to kind of go up high and go back down and go up high. So this kind of keeps it next door or right nearby. This holds a gallon. I think a top feeder holds 2 gallons. There's drowning with both. So if you see a lot of drowning in these little holes here, you just want to take something and scoop the bees out, a fork or something, and just kind of try to keep it clear for more bees to drown, I guess. I'm always taking my hive tool, and you just have to scrape a layer of bees off. It's sad, but it's part of beekeeping. So don't worry about it too much.
Is that 1 feeder per hive?
1 feeder per hive, yes. And when you're finished feeding your bees, you want to take this out and replace it with a frame. If you don't take it out and you leave it in, you'll never get it out because they glue it in so tight that you won't get it out. So that's one drawback to this, is it's hard to change if you leave it in. And
It says it can feed in winter. Should you feed in the winter?
in the winter, you won't be feeding anything that's fluid because you don't want to add humidity or you'd add to the condensation problem. And bees can get moldy if there's, they have the condensation on top dripping down to the wet bees, and then you create a mold condition. They'll eat honey, hopefully. That's what's the best for them. If they run out of honey, then there are some emergency feed strategies that you can employ. And we can touch on that a little bit. It's mostly dry sugar, or you can make fondant for them.
So then the next spring, they'll still have enough honey to get them through till the first bloom?
Hopefully. You can begin, now in my bee yard, I'm going to start stimulation feeding in 2 weeks. So once I start to do that, it simulates a nectar flow, and we don't have any flowers in Utah. at the end of February, so I have to provide them with food continuously until we have that first bloom. Hopefully it's early-ish. Snow in the mountains and sun and flowers in the valley.
You're feeding them like that. You're not putting the feeder back in with the next year. With what you're talking about doing this following year. Is that where they put the little, I've seen them where they got the little like a food deal on the top of the...
Oh yeah, just an inverted bottle.
Yeah, is that what you're talking about? For stimulating the nectar run in April on here?
Yes, yes. I just use this. I just pull this end frame out and plop this back in and fill it full of liquid.
So you're doing it. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not completely opening my hive. I'm just taking my hive tool and popping the top and bottom box apart and sliding it over about 2 inches and taking that end frame out and putting this one back in. So I'm just replacing it.
So what will be in that M frame when you're going out?
Usually it's empty.
Because they like to stay in the center.
Yeah, they'll stay in the center. Sometimes it's honey. Yeah, and if it is honey, then I'll take that and put it up in the top. And that's usually, the bees usually move to the top through the winter. So at some point, I'll then put the bees on the bottom, but that's another class, different class.
If you go into the winter kind of week, is there a way to determine, a bad point if they've run out of honey, to see if they've run out of food for the winter?
I do a practice where I do emergency feeding. I put the emergency food on in December so that by the time they work their way up, they'll be up into the sugar or the fondant by December. And it's an ample amount. If they're a strong colony, they'll manage. If it's a weak colony, I take my winter losses in the fall, so I won't overwinter a weak colony. It's too stressful, and you get all emotional about it, and so I just as soon let nature take its course and get over it and get a new package in the spring. So, any more questions about feeders? Yes?
Feeders, but sometimes we have some problem with bees.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Bees going into our building
Yes.
wall, going in for like 6-7 years. They're in there again this year. Is there a new colony? Is that going to be a problem?
If you get a colony, no. There could be potential competitive robbing situations in the fall, but early in the season, no. It should be fine.